because my I was thinking a lot of concepts.
Surprise. That's all we want.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Welcome everyone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Come on in, come on in, come on in. Right over here, there she is. Look at the hour, as man.
Start rolling audio. Start in the next like 5 minutes or so. Subtract 5 minutes. Subtract 5 minutes. Oh, cell phone song. Right? Minerva, should there cell phone songs or not? All right.
I think we already said that.
Oh yeah, I didn't hear it. We're all good.
Somebody did, right?
All right.
But it doesn't hurt to say it again.
Yeah. All cell phones off.
You guys, shut your cell phones, please. All phones off. All cell phones off. Mine's on.
Yes, Mars? Oh, that's nice. That's very nice. That's very nice. Need a mic.
Okay, I'm ready. Alright. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for the invitation. I want to talk to you about Aboriginal art and Aboriginal culture. My story is, well, you read my bio. I will not repeat it. I'm a medical trained doctor, trained in Poland. And 20 years ago, at my age, sort of 30, I thought about what to do with my life, and I looked at the map, and I wanted to go somewhere which is very far. And in Europe we have just 2 weeks holiday, and I quit just my job and decided to go somewhere to think about my life. And I look at the map, and I know nothing about Australia. I know only the better place possible for Poland. And I arrived in 2005 to Australia, and never left. So I'm living in Australia for 20 years. I was traveling a lot in the world before, and this was absolutely unexpected event and not planned. I didn't speak English one word as a father. So my degree, medical degree, was not recognized in Australia. So I decided to leave everything behind, my family, everything, but I was not married at this time, a very small family. And well, I started to learn English, and I did my own medical training again in Australia from scratch. I did public health training because I'm a specialist in public health medicine. And as a part of this training is Aboriginal health as a doctor. You have to have compulsory some module today. And this module you can do like in the suburb in New York, let's say Chelsea, but if you want, you can go and experience real Aboriginal health to learn. But not many people want to do this because this is very harsh environment. And I got the post, which was advertised for 7 years. And for 7 years, no one wanted to take this post. So when I arrived in December, in making 15 plus Celsius degree in Hubert, in Western Australia, dressed in suits from Metropolitan Sydney, and all people look at me like a very strange person. Anyway, I fell in love in country, in Australia in general. A year later, I met my current partner. So it was a good sequence. At first, I fell in love in country, then met someone. Because very often it's opposite. You move with someone because you met someone. Anyway, I spent 3 years in remote parts of Australia with my training in public health. It's from 2010 to 2013. And I had absolutely unbelievable experience because I was traveling with Royal Flying Doctors. When they go on the plane and fly to the most remote communities, Aboriginal communities, imaginary. When it's 15 people and it's 1 hour on a plane flight, of course, small planes. So I even learned how to fly the plane during this time, which was again a very interesting experience in how to fly between the wheelie wheels, which is sort of like twisters on the desert. Very small twisters, but afterwards you can see them and they're very flight. So this sort of experience. Now, I started to later visit often, when I could, go and see my old places. And when COVID came in 2020, sort of, that Australia was very restricted lockdown. Melbourne had the longest restricted time in all the world, from 7 months or so. Sydney 4 months. And I got information from well-informed sources that tomorrow Sydney borders will be closed. So if you want to go, just go now. And I took a plane at 6 a.m. I flew to Melbourne this time. Then Melbourne was shut, and I flew to Western Australia to Perth. And I rent the car, and I spent 4 months traveling from Perth through Western Australia, Northern Territory, and almost 20,000 kilometers over 4 months, driving myself and visiting absolutely amazing places. And this time, no one was there. I was alone. And you have to remember, in Australia, it's very, even 10 hours drive, and even satellite phone doesn't work. There are places where the remnants of satellites are thrown there because there's nothing there. So if you go into one town to another, you have to call and say that I'm coming in 10 hours, because if not, then you send a plane. Because you can be dead. If your car will break up, you have to have boot of food, water, and go for a trip. So I have this well, I have to have second one of my life experience of speeding with the car, 107 km per hour, because it's definitely nothing there. And the roads close and straight, like unbelievable. Anyway, so I started to be very interested in Aboriginal art. Before, when I moved to Australia, and many of the Australians, when you see Aboriginal art, you don't pay for it, you don't understand what it is, It's very different. And in the past, it was sort of, didn't tell me anything, this. But during my trips, I started to talk to Aboriginal artists and communities and people, and started to understand what it's about. So over this, really, the lockdown was very much focused for me on art in remote communities in Western Australia and Northern Territory. Now, before we start this presentation, I would like to ask you not to take any photos of this, my slides, because why? I will show you things which you will never read, never see. And some pictures will contain images of deceased Aboriginal people, which is very, I will talk later about this, very sensitive topic. And majority of the artwork here is my own. I have a small collection of very unique artwork. Or when I could, I got a permission to show you the pictures.
Can you take a picture right now?
Yes, of course. You can take me, you can take this. No problem. Okay. Now, question. I know that one person is from Australia, which I'm very stressed. Who else is from Australia?
My daughter lives there.
Okay, so you have some for daughter. Anyone visited?
My ex is from Australia.
Okay. The more inside experience. Who of you ever visited Australia? Okay. Okay, so I understand the majority sort of never been there, and that's
So I knew a famous painter, Brent Whiteley.
my famous like that.
I knew a famous painter, Brent Whiteley, who was from.
But so
I knew Brent Whiteley.
but
He lived in the Chelsea Hotel when I looked there.
well, this I consider this as the first part of my presentation. That will be an interest. In the February coming, I will talk about the most famous Australian Aboriginal painters, because today we'll cover everything from 65,000 years behind to 1970. And can you ask?
That's a lot of money.
Oh, there's very big difference. This is Aboriginal art, 9 to 70s, everything that, and from 70s to now.
In 1 hour?
Sorry.
In 1 hour?
Sorry.
1 hour.
In 1 hour. I will try my best. Okay. Now, my disclosures. First of all, I don't have any art degree, and I'm not a professional art critic. Everything what you hear here, I will talk about my own experience. Right? The presentation contains images of deceased Aboriginal people. Why? They believe that basically what happened, the funerals are extremely important, probably the most important ceremony and custom in Aboriginal culture. They believe that dead body sort of, if the person died, they changing his name, or you can't talk his name or show any images. Very often for some warning period of time, up to 12 months, but depends on the communities. Basically, this is sort of the spiritual belief that the spirit leaving the body. They don't believe in natural causes of death. They believe that you die because old spirits and things suck something from you or some things. So they don't believe in natural causes of death, which is interesting. And there is massive diversity between Aboriginal communities, how they how they proceed with funerals. There is massive, basically, but what is very common, when the person died, the immediate person is moved from this place. And very often all the community will move from this place because it's the place of this old spirit which is still there. And it's lots of stories around, but we'll focus on art. But basically, again, there are countless images of this system. And as I said, majority of our artworks from here is from my collection. Now, it's very important for you to understand that in Australia, in any public event or speeches or event like this one or conferences, we're having always acknowledgement of the country, which can do anyone, not Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, and they're showing respect to Aboriginal people as the traditional owners of the land. And well, if I would be now in Sydney, I will tell that now I pay respect to traditional owners of this land and waters, which is presentation of place, especially Gadigal people, because it's their own country in Sydney specifically. And I'm very respectful for the elders, past and present. And this is sort of typical formula, but always you should add something more personal very often, because it's not just, tick the box. So in here, I would like to express my deepest appreciation of Aboriginal people always, and officially recognized as an Australian flag, in Australia 1995. So this, I will need to talk about the story about Aboriginal people, but it's a very recent story, how they gained the rights, traditional rights. Now, here a little bit, what I was doing in Libra during these 4 years, I was doing trachoma screening. Trachoma is the bacterial disease of the eyes, which causes blindness. And the treatment is single dose of antibiotic. Australia is the only one country in the world, developed country, having still blind trachoma. Before now. I was doing the review of the program for Western Aboriginal government with recommendation to change this. But it's still, you remember probably here in America when immigrants came in 1900, they checked the eyes for trachoma because where the lead, you can see the vesicles which indicate this disease, and it's very highly contagious as well. So I was, well, what does it mean? That a very big connection with families, and maybe because I was Polish as well, they treated me differently, and very exotic place I call it for Aboriginal people. And now on the left side, I have extremely privilege who need this person. There is a time. I don't know if any one of you saw the movie Rabbit Proof Fence.
Yep.
So this is original youngest sister, one that she died a year later in that room. She was 95. So if you didn't see, I encourage you to see Rabbit Proof Fence. This is the story of Aboriginal stolen generation, when under Australian law for 65 years, starting from 1910, children was removed from the Aboriginal children were removed from families under a regulation under the Australian Act and sent thousands of kilometers very often to the missions when they was told that your parents died or given you up. You now are forbidden to speak your language. You now will learn how to cook, how to clean house. You can't do anything which is Aboriginal. You have different name. And on these missions, it's estimated that 1 in 10 children, 1 in 10 to 1 to 10 was taken away. And of course, this was massive impact on Aboriginal, not this stolen generation, but generation to follow, as a massive trauma, because these children was very often trained as a basically, cleaning houses and slavery for white people. And in Aboriginal art, the Aboriginal people was considered inferior as a race compared to people of Caucasian. This was done under this brand of protection, child protection, against poverty. This was the official thing. But in fact, what happened, that was not true. Very often the children were sexually and physically abused. And now there's a lot of documentaries showing really what these missions were. So she was one of them. She was escaped with two other sisters from this mission and walked 800 miles on foot in the desert to find the home. She died in 1995, and I think that Aboriginal people are extremely originally healthy people. They have very good diet based on kangaroo meat, is very lean. They little bit meat. They mostly vegetables. They have those hunting and gatherers. And basically before colonization, they lived very long life. And we know from anthropological investigation, there was really 95 something years in very good health. So when they moved to Western civilization, our food and everything, Aboriginals are extremely sensitive genetically to develop diabetes. And in Port Hedland, when I was, believe or not, the most common operation in Port Hedland surgery is cutting feet of young Aboriginal children, 35 years old people, from diabetes. They develop 100 times more diabetes than Western background people. So, well, what happens when you cut the feet to Aboriginal people? Months later, they commit suicide because their feet connect them with the land. So it's terrible story, but it's true and happening now. I visited tents in desert with Aboriginal people at age 30, 40 on dialysis from diabetes in the tent in desert. And you can imagine in desert giving medications, insulin is just hopeless. Anyway, now, so I interacted with many people there and tried to learn Aboriginal. Well, I tried to learn survival in the bush, basically. So I tried to make fire, I tried to do fishing, I did the spear fishing as well. Well, this is a spear. By the way, the thrower invented by Aboriginal people is the fastest weapon ever invented because in medieval time they had this machinery and so they was very advanced. I learned as well Aboriginal medicine and how to find water in desert, how to find food in the complete desert, and lots of interesting stuff. And especially I learned Aboriginal techniques of Aboriginal painting. We will hopefully now move to our main topic, which is Aboriginal art. Now, what is interesting is that majority of Aboriginal art you will not find in museums. You will find in private collections. For example, one of the most famous Aboriginal painter of watercolors from 60s. In National Art Gallery, it's 5 paintings. I saw in private collections over 100 paintings, which cost millions now. It's very unique. And I will talk next in February about this painting. So basically, I get access to private collections or stock piles of artwork from tens and tens years ago, hidden in the shelters in deserts, some shelters from metal things and terrible conditions. But they survived very well because mostly it was painted after 70s on acrylic paints, very high quality acrylic paints on Belgian Minerva. I will talk about it later. But anyway, I saw and the dealers who sell me the artwork, they call this carpet seller. Because why? Because as you can see, hanging this paintings is linen, and it's very good quality linen. But it's not framed yet. The later is framed. But this is how you will see this. So you have like going with carpets or things in places. Now, little bit information about Aboriginal people. Now, what is the oldest continued community in the world? I went to the bookshop and looked at all possible art books at the beginning to see what, and you start usually Chinese, and Mesopotamia, barely you can see, and every book to start at the oldest, or one of the top oldest artwork is Aboriginal art. We know that human race originated in Africa. Around 100,000 years ago, they are the oldest artwork ever invented in Africa. Not very long ago discovered. But around 65,000 years ago, people started to migrate from Africa to Asia, to Europe, and at this time, exactly, we know that Aboriginals started to colonize our Aboriginal land. And we know as well, anthropologically, geologically, that Gondwana was the land merged, all continents were merged together, and after they dissolved. So Australia was started to be very isolated, and this Aboriginal community survived in massive isolation until 1870s, end of the 19th century, when Captain Cook came and colonized Australia. Now, what is important? So 65,000 years old is the community, and most likely the artwork as well. Now I will tell you why it's difficult to date artwork. Because this was mostly rock painting, of course, we'll talk about it in a moment. But the paints used was mineral paints from rocks, from things. So if you put rock on rock, how you can separate, you do not measure rock page, but the paint page. So the technology of the carbon measuring is very complicated. You saw very often that, this artwork which was dated 10,000 years now has 60,000 years, or opposite. So it's very difficult. So why this method of isotope measurement is not the best way to measure very old artwork. The best is to see the shelters and what sort of animals was living around. For example, we know that the Tasmanian tiger extinct 4,000 years ago. So if the Aboriginals painted this Tasmanian tiger, you could get better proof how old possibly it would be this painting. And there are other methods where you basically collect together different evidence and make some plan. Now, who are Aboriginal people? Before colonization, before coming to Australia, we know with the banks, they had another name, they put all the languages. They have still in archives what they find out when they arrived to Australia. Around 500 different languages, 500 existed before colonization. How many you have now today? Half of them, 250. And it's estimated that every month or so, one language disappears. And I had pleasure, and almost, I would say, privilege to meet two people who was the last living people speaking the language. And they were dead, the language will disappear. And Australia, Aboriginals, they don't have written language at all. So now it's lots of programs to record and archive languages, but it's 200 now. Quickly this map showing you different languages currently in Australia. So this and every this language has different culture, different art, different. So we have like 250 different countries in Australia. So not every Aboriginal is equal to another Aboriginal. They feel completely different world, different space. What's interesting that they are territorial people. They don't like much migrate. They migrate only when they have no food in the land. They moving, but not far. And they live in the hunter-gathering way of life. They never plant any crops. They never have any agriculture. They just eat what is there and they move. So they never damage environment, really. They moving around first, but never they produce anything. However, they was going to trade between the tribes, especially if they trade the paint, which I talk about in a moment. Now, so we have hundreds of different tribes. We call this in Australia skin groups, but they are different names, but they are basically very distinct, different type of cultures, not only language, but everything around. Now, they have very sophisticated marriage system, which genetically prevent inbreeding. You will have the Aboriginal, no way that they will have genetically connected people merging together, which is very interesting. They have knowing the language, which I said. So how from generation to generation the community survive? By telling stories, always, singing and painting. Those three forms always together. And in Aboriginal verse of painting or singing is the songbird of a particular family, which have relation to the past and dream time. I will talk about later. Now, very interesting Aboriginal people that don't have feelings of possession or ownership, which in the past was a big problem. You come to a car, taking a restaurant, your car is my car. Artists as well, if Minerva had all this money, and you move had plan, everyone had right to take this money. And this was happening with many Aboriginal, well, most Aboriginal artists. They died in absolute poverty. The most richest Aboriginal artist, all the money was taken by the family clan. Lorna Fencer Parola, my favorite painter, she died in 2006. I never met her. Her dream was to have her own house, and she bought this camper. You know, she had this for one night only. The uncle came and went away. So this is how the owner. This was legal problems later because these people they don't know that this is yours because in the environment where they live, everything is ours. It's no, you not possess this shelter. This is not your tree. This is not your billabong. This is not. All environment is equal. Belong to everyone, and everyone will produce. And you can have in Aboriginal communities, 20 grandfathers, 20 aunties, and 20 uncles, which are not very connected with blood, but this is sort of friendship and a relationship between groups. And what happens when you have funeral? You go to 20 funerals. This is why what happens very often that funerals are massive issue with introduction and health programs because the village suddenly disappear for 2 weeks or school disappear for 2 weeks because they're going to celebrate the funerals, which is extremely important. Now, two other things. I think the most important and applicable to us is the thing that Aboriginal people have extreme connection to the land and environment where they live. My friend, bring some pictures. And so they again. So in the moment how this manifests in artwork. So they are very, very spiritually connected through the ancestors and myths, and it's called the dream time. There is stories of creation. And in the stories, they are the ancestors, they are people who passed away, they join them. It's called the dream time. There's lots of meanings of the word dream time. But so, for example, subjects painted by Aboriginal people are very related. This is dream time and the talking, sort of. Like subject of your painting. This sort of thing. This is telling the story about something in the past. This is your painting. They have a connection to the environment where they live, as well to the stars and heavens and cosmos. And they believe some tribes that when you die, the star is your mother or grandmother or people study, but all meanings when they live in the star. So there are very, both vertical and horizontal connections with the world here. Now, I will pass away one thing. So, we finish two things here. For the millennium, 1,000 years, there was very extremely connected and adapted to the very harsh environment of Australia. 90% of Australia is desert. On the Northern Territory, where is majority of Aboriginal people, around 30% of Northern Territory population, is the two seasons. Is the wet season half a year and is dry season extreme heat. But Aboriginal people have at least 12 seasons they can describe, which we can't recognize. They have very complex calendar of the seasons, which they know very well what's happening next as a cycle of biological cycle. Well, they was very well adapted, very healthy, living very healthy life up to 95 in this desert until Captain Cook arrived in the first fleet in 1788 and claimed, of course, land as a British land. However, 150 years earlier, Dutch sailors, was sailing past. And we know that they didn't do this, because otherwise Australia would be Dutch. if they would come. But we know, because the north of part of the most remote part of Australia is called Anthem Land, which I was referring because it's very important for art and culture part of Australia. And Anthem was the name of the vessel, one of the two vessels of Dutch vessels investigating the 1764 Now, you have to know that Australians have been recognized as citizens of Australia in 1949. They didn't have passport. They didn't go overseas. There was not considered, the dogs was considered in cats, this country, but not Aboriginal people until 1914. Now, and they have been included in national census, it means counted, when 1971, 54 years ago, first time. Before there was no, nothing like that. Now, this is, this is something which you never, will read maybe in the internet, but not in that depth. I will pass that. Drawing which I made from this Israel. I made this drawing talking to witnesses of the arrival of Queen Elizabeth II with Prince Philip in 1963 to Australia. And they visited, remote part of Australia. I had to be adventurous. Catherine, Hot Spring, they went to Alice Springs, and Queen requested portrait painted by Aboriginal person. Now, this happened. You will find no records of the, you will find that this was happened, okay? But there is not any record of the picture of this portrait, but I know and met people who saw this portrait in 1963. Well, this picture I made, this is not original picture, I made this picture based on the story. So basically, when Aboriginal people arrived, what they saw in the bush, big corpus of soldiers, of course, security, another layer of another one, another fences around, and they paint the queen. The queen is somewhere there. And this is all the all environment around. This is how Aboriginal people, so I'm not a student of Minerva, I can imagine, because they want people to have all the books, all these things, and probably all the suburbs painted from the painting as they would. So you can imagine if they lose this, it's like cutting their legs of them, because this is all they were. This is all the values you. So this is the concept, how Aboriginal people perceive object. And this is other original examples. What is the paint? Now, as I said, I will refer to my favorite was by Lorna Naparula. She didn't speak English, she died in 2006. She's one of the very well respected, I can pass. She had painting like disease. She was painting compulsory on anything. She was sitting in the cafe and painting on the floor. She was sitting painted on the chair. She made, when I arrived to Canada, I saw so many her artwork. I thought there was someone copied this just for sale. And no, they are all her original, thousands of them. And she was, now, Aboriginal people can't paint anything you want. No, they have rules. You are custodian, like she was, bush potato also. One bush potato and one potato, I will paint. Potato is very important ingredient in the food. Women go to the desert and eat this potato we have on the right. These look like sweet potatoes, but they are half a meter underground. And they use wooden sticks. It takes 50-degree heat to remove them. And they are the main source of carbohydrates in Australian desert population. They are very rich in carbohydrates, but how you prepare them is not fair. You have to chop them, because you can't eat them, they are taste like a child, you don't have to. You chop them and you put to the wooden bark basket, the river for 3 days. So this tart is removed, and then you can cook this and it tastes like fries. But they are very important. And she was only allowed to paint in Northern Territory bush potato. She was the Yala custodian, which is extremely important. No one else could paint this. And any other subject, she was a custodian. So very often traditional Aborigines, they tend and specialize in something specific, not necessarily food, but some dreaming story or something. Now, so look, have a look. What is this potato? This is the potato here, and there are all the roots and all the things that here going to the soil. So they don't, again, they make everything around this stuff, this object. This is another example of that. This is called caterpillar. Now, when I look, when is this caterpillar? Well, when is this mouth? This rounded thing. It's there. Or there. You can't see this, of course, it's caterpillar. And the story is, caterpillar story, she also was the custodian, was the woman was going to collect these potatoes, and there was in some season lots of caterpillars which are very itchy when they get up. They scratch and make some sort of allergic reaction. There was nuisance on these caterpillars. And this was basically all the flowers and colors which amazing are in the bush. And this is caterpillar there somewhere in this environment. Again, how this. And now I show you a very unique video of the Lorna Persona Canula, very similar, which was taken on the tree where I was sitting some 8 years after her death in the country. So let's. I hope that. The music a little bit speed up this thing, but I want to show you a few important things. So they paint always on the ground. They never paint anything on the wall. What doesn't mean that Aboriginal painting really should be shown on the floor, not paint on the wall. And I asked them, how are you painting there if you have it? And they said, oh, you can do whatever you like. You can paint on the roof or on the ceiling. I said, how you position this? I said, whatever you want. Because they look at this like this. So this is all Aboriginal paintings. Now, she's painting, oh, this is the potato, small potato with all these things. And they very often was commissioned by dealers. They brought up, well, there is common perception very low that the dealers, give them a little bit money, take their artwork, sell for $1,000. It's not very true. The dealers make very important. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just moving this to another time. Once you start going, you see me. She was very bossy and asked people to move this thing, really very. She was a very Filipino woman from Canal Street. She didn't speak English and she didn't recognize the $50 notes, what they know. So they give the money, she was just. I have the book here. You can have a look at the painting. Yes. Oh, I don't remember the book, so I don't very much remember. Well, now, yes, of course. And I don't know in the bush where keys are available. I'm just curious. So she was painting the Olympics 2000. She was one of the well. If you want to see her painting, can I think you can see it in New York, because her paintings. Okay. In 1991, her work was included in the group exhibition Aboriginal art show in the Australian Embassy, Washington, USA. And exhibition of the Australian Embassy in Washington, and the recent late 1999, her works featured in the Indigenous art of the Dreamtime, held in the main foyer of the United Nations building in New York, USA. So if you want to see her, you can see here. Okay. Now, so few comments about if you are buying original art. There are very simple rules, because what's happening when you're going to these places, there is lots of massive tourist production, mass production for tourists, which is sort of like print. So when you buy the authenticity of the Aboriginal art is very difficult to ascertain, because very often there was not only painters, but they have had people in the families and the groups. And in getting the certificate that I had here, for example, signed in the established local dealer of art store, that is the Aboriginal art store, very often run by Aboriginal communities. And the best group is to have artists with the artwork in the hands. So here you can have a look at my work here with different types of scaling artists. It's the best way. But what you have to look at, first of all, the good quality Aboriginal paint is painted in very expensive, very good quality linen, Belgian linen. It's very well. And this was given them by the dealers that offered. They was commissioned the artists, come to my house, I will give you food, I will give you place, I will give you very high quality acrylic paints, very high quality linen, all the things, and you paint, but you have to leave this artwork to me and I will have something. This was the contrast between the artists. Without this, we have no Aboriginal work. And the dealers play very important role in promoting Aboriginal art as well in Australia and overseas. Now quickly, I know how we'll time, this is not board. I will go now in the paint. This was all the better cultural there. So now we will focus on this part. It's really important for Australia, Ancestral. Now there are only, I think, 3 or 4 communities in the world now where still people living in the primordial sort of conditions without human civilization at all. Basically, women living the birth under the tree in the bush. Okay? There's not any contact. There are few of them, and one of them, they are in Amazon in Brazil, Papua New Guinea as well, Peru, and India, of course. St. Louis tribes. And in Australia. So basically, here, and one is important as well, is Canal here. It's connected to the land by river, because East Alligator River. It's called alligator because people thought there was alligators like in America, but of course there are salty crocodiles. But like everything in Australia lays underneath the name the alligator. So it's very East Alligator River. And you can see here on this picture, here, this river, this bridge, small bridge, connecting this piece of massive unclaimed land with the land. And in the wet season, which is half of the year or more, it's non-accessible. Basically, no one can go there. And by law now, no one can go there in general. You can't visit this place. And because I was having photography special permission, and I was allowed to go there. But in general, and really I would just almost step there because I didn't want to, This is very interesting area. And infested with thousands of salt crocodiles, which are, as you can see, they are cannibals. They are eating other crocodiles. This then crocodile gives the head and having another crocodile. So I never saw that many crocodiles in my life to this tiny boat which took us on another side. Now, next to the river is the site of the most ancient rock painting, which is called Hubert. So it's a very magical place, really, because it's the hill, and you see from here, and you look this massive plateau here, And here you have just sort of, not caves, but the rocks. Basically. So Aboriginal didn't paint in caves. They paint on the exposed rocks. Exposed rocks, which was down in dusk. Like Michelangelo probably painted Sistine Chapel. You can imagine all the trees with the paint dripping from the top in plus 40-degree heat and wind and all these things was quite a challenge. So this was how they painted. Now, what materials they use? So all Aboriginal paintings use the organic all the paints. Coming from four different types: red ochre, yellow ochre, and white, which is the mud from the pillow, from clay, basically, and charcoal. Now they never use any binder, which means like in Lascaux, they use the animal fat as a binder. They never use. Now what's happening? If you use a pen, or this is my pen, I went to look at how they excavate this. So what they do, they grind this and form this like bricks. And they trade with this in the past. So they make things like blocks of the pen, then grind it, then they're mixed with water and apply to the rock. Now, what's happening when you apply these different colors over the thousands of years? You can imagine wind, water, everything going on these rocks. So not much. Because the red ochre had the smallest particles, the oldest paintings are really, and over time oxidized and turning a little bit blue. So the blue, they are the oldest. But what happens when they look at the rocks in Hubert, they have 1,000 layers of painting over the thousands of years. Overpainted under another painting. So we have massive history overpainted painting. This is how it looks like. Now, what tools they was used? But again, what they have. For big painting, they use the broad brushes from bark and all these things, but they have more sophisticated tools. And all of you know the dot painting, usually because with Aboriginal painting, dot. Interestingly, there is no characteristic to any land and northern territory. This is Western Australia and other parts. The most ancient, original way was cross-hatching. And you could recognize as well different tribes. Depends what sort of cross-hatching they use. And they was as well allowed to use only one type of cross-hatching. So when the tribes migrate, they could recognize who's living on this land. Because on barks on the trees was the painting and the rocks. So now I have, this is the lion brush. Or, I don't remember. This I got original for you, which I got from River. Well, this normally is grilled. They said put the freezer and hold this. But look, this is just for you to show you, of course, dry. But this is very, very. You can say this is only one type of grass from Alligator River, which have inside these long fibers. And basically you can have long, very brush. I can pass around. Don't touch the end. It should be longer. And what they're doing with this, have a look now. It's this is done by hand. It's so parallel thing that I couldn't believe that this is made by a human hand. And they are massive artworks. It's not small. And I will show you now video from the art center, because I do so many cultural meetings about the guy who telling you how to paint and do this construction.
An actor in Australia, they call them Bogans. I'm like, why would you call them Bogan? I'm like, that's not.
Bogan?
Yeah, Bogan. That's
Bogan is different.
Is it a different?
Okay.
Yeah.
So very quickly now about this. How to name properly and what is the improper name? So Bogan. It's nothing with Aboriginal people.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That's just redneck. Someone very rough and not educated. That's crap.
That's right.
And then nothing with Aboriginal people. Bogan can be both, Aboriginal and Aboriginal. It's just, very sort of class of people. This is Bogan would say. Very, doesn't mean that it's sort of, it's not sort of funny term, you know, how would you say it? Bogan. Bogan. What's bogan?
Like treasure trash.
Non-Aboriginal.
No.
Yeah, that's what I.
Nothing
I mean,
but-
and that's what I said.
Maybe like
Yeah.
Australian.
Yeah.
Very Australian sort of, well, speak, basically what I understand.
Sort of like a sort of maybe an affectionate term for like working class Australian.
Very simple person, I would say as well. Oh.
It's thrown around a lot, right? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's when it was thrown around. It was like it had to do with Snowtown.
Okay, so
Like the movie, you've seen Snowtown.
That was set 2 suburbs away from us.
Yeah, he was like, those are bogans. I'm like, okay, those
yeah,
are
yeah, because they can go to
Yeah.
and Bogan will come around to New York
yeah.
with 2 beers, the Belmont, in the shorts, in winter, and look at this, oh, like this corn. Yeah, this is the Bogan.
Okay.
So it's a bit not snow, but it's a bit more simple, I would say. Now the name sort of objective. So collective name, if you want to name the people living in Australia, the traditional owners of the land, there are, we call them indigenous people or indigenous Australians. Indigenous always with capital. Indigenous people. Oh, these indigenous. This is normal, nice word to say that my friend at work is indigenous or have indigenous background. He's indigenous. It's nice to say. This is approved communication. Nothing, bad. So this is how formal, not formal. You can.
I think there's also contention about the phrase.
Yeah.
Like in this context, I think it makes a lot of sense always where if you're in Australia, I think there's a bit of resistance from Aboriginal people about Indigenous Australians or Aboriginal Australians because they reject the idea that Australia as a sovereign, a nation state is
Yes.
like they belong to, or like they don't.
So
refusing that construction.
yes, so in Canberra, the capital, we have still tent in front of Parliament saying embassy, or the original embassy. With people demonstrating there, they're still not recognized as a being my own land. So this is very deep, it's very sensitive topic. But for you, if you come to Australia, it's good to know how to name persons. So you can say this, I visited Aboriginal communities. Now, so Indigenous people is collective name because they are not only Aboriginal people, Indigenous people. There's another group of people very important, Torres Strait. Torres Strait, there is on the Oh, it was too hard. So part of Australia, well, is this other land, which I said, and another big Cape Town, is the Torres Strait, the islanders there. This is separate to Aboriginal group. Originally sort of connected, but considered as completely separate group. So we always say Aboriginal and Torres Strait people. They are both Indigenous Australians or Indigenous people of Australia. So very often in government documents or formal is the abbreviation ATSI, ATSI, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. So ATSI groups, the ATSI is disadvantaged combination, the ATSI, Aboriginal and Torres Strait, always Torres Strait. But in general, communication really missing this Torres Strait because they are very minority as well. Aboriginal people, how many have Aboriginal people in Australia? What is the percentage of all population Aboriginal people in Australia? Less than 5%, I think around 4%. Yes. Which means 500,000, maybe, sort of, around. How many was when Aboriginal people arrived? Some sources say around 2 million. But because introduction of smallpox decimated completely Aboriginal people, all venereal diseases, all other things, and of course now the McDonald's, which caused terrible thing. Well, I simplify it, but it was then food. So anyway, so again, Indigenous Australians, Aboriginal people, Aboriginal and Torres Strait people, and now new term which appeared relatively new is the First Nations people. very often acknowledge the First Nations people. This is very official things, First Nations people. There's again collective work for Indigenous Australians. Now there are words which I'm very sorry, but for educational purposes, have to say, you will kind of see like abos, abo. This is very derogatory term, very rude, and absolutely unacceptable. We're not using black people, sort of, Australia term, Aboriginal people. Any other negative terms? I don't think so. No, hard to say. But because Aboriginal, sort of, never use this. And if you can hear, you should know that this is very depreciating root term in English. In our spring desert, here jest dostępny, kropki, są miejsca, gdzie się robi, kropkuje się. Sorry, I'm talking Polish now. It's not painting, we have, but here in the region of Katrin, we have cross-hatching. And we will now show this tool, how to do this. And you see how difficult it is. Grass. This course I did, and I learned, this is terrible, but it's mine, how difficult it is to make yes, it's my exercise. There. Clay. So then they're now using acrylic paint, but in the past they used the clay from the Billabong, from the river or something. Mud, basically. Yes, this is mud I'm showing, because this is in the bush, Katrina. But I want to now show you how to do it. So there's the water. There was this. Turn the water off. Off. And they're making this massive output, huge. And when you run out of bread, you stop and play down. And I'm only in painful. Now, one line, and now to show how to make a syrup. And then you know why? Background of dry was severe alcoholic. He's supposed to die, but suddenly he doesn't drink for us 10 years or 20, and he's running the cultural arts center teaching people of the painting, original painting, and school children. Okay, just quickly what I move on. But so here I visited at East Alligator River in the bush. The artist just sitting there with these blankets and paints and painting there. It's not studio. It's really very simple art studio they have. And he showed me how to cut this. But this is the artwork when in that river they're making. Based on these tiny brushes. And they are absolutely mesmerizing. That river is around a few hundred kilometers from Darwin. And this is a place when the sort of young Aboriginal people won last many years the national competitions in Aboriginal art. And they have as well silk painting on silk. Women doing this as well. It's very magic, very remote place as well to visit. Now, how they started paint. So all this painting, especially women job, was for body paint, for ceremonial purposes. And this on the left is just my favorite Lorna Fancy Makalura, which was beautiful. She was very sexually open woman, I would say, very domineering. But this is my ceremonial painting with the white clay. And inside a very old photographs, the first photograph will be available about the ceremonial paintings with the straws in the nose of Aboriginal people. So they started to paint on the body paint. Before probably in rocks or similar part. And this was just 2 weeks ago. I was at a conference in Bristol. No, Adelaide. It was a big conference in Adelaide, and we have always in this sort of conferences invited a representative of local Aboriginal people, and they're doing this sort of welcome to country because if I'm doing presentation, I'm doing I'm doing acknowledgement of the country, and Aboriginal people do welcome to the country. So they will say, welcome to my country, and they call the country the land where we are now. So this part of the north, welcome to my country. So the all the 250 different countries, and they call these countries, and with the very important events like Olympics or Parliament Summit opening, the smoking ceremony, which is more complex ceremony run by Aboriginal entry and it's very sort of special event. Now let's quickly look at the rocks and find out what we have there. So, well, what Aboriginal people was painting, so they very often, probably like Chinese, but they more concentrated on the environment than themselves. And if they painted human figures, it was always spirits or some, not they painted as well themselves, but very rare. I will show you a few they paintings, very interesting. But here you can see mini spirits. What are mini spirits? That is very common across almost all Aboriginal people. Mini spirits are very thin spirits, so normally Aboriginal can't see them except medicine men. Only medicine men can recognize them, and they are mischievous spirits. They are not necessarily keen, they are not necessarily harming, but they will do something, and very often they are behind the rocks, they are sitting there, somewhere around, and they just basically if something wrong with you, if you forgot something, this is probably not you, but the mini spirit doing something, and you have to do something to repel this. They are very thin people, and all these human paintings are very thin in Aboriginal figure. By the way, Aborigines was not overweight ever. It was running, the handling and all these things. So you can see that all these ones on the top left and on the right one. This is with the spear thrower here. So this special attachment, which I practice this, is very interesting. How you throw the spear is absolutely massive speed. And you can, hand wall up, so kind of work something like this. And he gets attached to build up the basket and some other things. So this is the mini spirits. Now, this is dancing spirit figure. Now, there, as you can see, not that nice as you would think. Now, where is my book? Different types of spirits. This, but basically, you can see that Aboriginal painting, all these human figures are extremely dynamic. They are never standing, they are running, they are moving, very, very dynamic, which is very similar to typical day dancing. They always have the legs like this, very, very characteristic ceremonial dancing, and which reflect as well in the drawing. Now, this is very famous red dancer shelter. I will give you a little description from the book. So this is size of the human figure roughly. So this is kind of the meaning with open mouths, which are occasionally the range of human figures. One particular style where the head is hook-shaped, is common in the region, belong to the recent art period. These figures with the white open mouths between the red dancer and the running woman freeze being related surviving in the white pigment. But this is sort of become a very famous red dancer, as you can see, very often in Aboriginal painting, all the genital areas are very exposed, which signify power and domination, and of course, fertility and these sort of things. And there are means you can buy in the shop. There are these tiny wooden sticks, as well as you can see the cross-hatching, very nice with ornaments, who have the faces here, and they sort of reflect how this means to live. Now, this is very quite unique paintings of the humans with swollen jaws, not jaws, swollen body. Probably due, or you can have swelling from heart failure or liver failure or kidney failure or whatever, but they are these people with diseases. And they believe, as I told you, that this is not natural thing, but some spirits cause this. This is, as you can see, not nice. There are different types of spirits. There are dangerous spirits, which are, again, not seen by Aboriginal people. Only medicine person can see them or rebel them. And they can die. They can kill you. And they are active, according to all the stories, at night. So it's very important and very true advice, never ever travel at night in Northern Territory especially. I had almost twice have accident driving. I learned myself. Every year is around 80 close to death car accidents, Northern Territory, with hitting wild animals. Mostly buffalo, water buffaloes, which are huge, sleep in the middle of the road, and they are not moving. They are brumbies, which are wild horses, which are like a situation that flock of horses just jumping from the street road when I was driving the bush. You would have what are other animals? We have the with two camels. Why camels you have in Australia? Believe or not, they are there. So basically, for Aboriginals, sort of spiritual through the dangerous spirits are active at night. So they never travel at night or never travel without company. This is very important. Yes.
How physically involved should that picture be?
Well, this red one is very large. It's like human size. They are very small. They are like half a meter, 20 meters. This is sort of this size.
This is human size.
No, this is very small. Very small. Very small. But this you can see. There's lots of dangerous things that people experience in this culture. And they have very often some sticks growing from the joints or knees or hands, which through these joints they suck other people's spirits or put something in your body. And this is of course not very nice, as you can see. This is very typical as well. Malignant spirit on bark painting is very often on Eucalyptus barks in Northern Territory, with all these connected wires around. There are female and male spirits. Oh, and this is one as well, very dangerous. Still an overdeveloped vulva. Because very often the Aboriginals think that all the genitals are exposed and they start to scare you or have some meaning. Like here, with his legs spread like this. Barbed spines growing from the arms and sort of dangerous here. And this is a very lovely one. It's on the left. This was painted from the Alligator River. This is a Mother Creation. So there are two main stories. There are millions of stories, of course. There are beautiful books which I can pass on. Of course, the Rainbow Serpent, which is the most famous. Including the children's book, but everyone knows about it in Australia knows this. But not everyone knows that in Anglian and Northern Territory is the Mother Creation. And, well, so basically, Mother Creation, this all the heads represent different languages, the main ancestral languages. And it's of course lots of stories, but on many paintings you can see how she created population and ancestral population. I will not go deep in the stories. Now, and this is very nice, of course, serpent, a rainbow serpent. So rainbow serpent, maybe I will have this is taken photo by David Attenborough, by the way, in 1949. He visited and he took one of the, before him, few people took the first photos from Ubir, which is not very long history, not long ago. But rainbow serpent, you can see how big, came from Anhemland, all this story. Basically, the serpent was moving through the land, creating all the creeks and rivers and mountains, and the serpent tried to find his tribe, and traveling, and finally find the tribe, and there was two brothers, he swallowed them, and then escaped by cutting his stomach, and after they turned parents. What is interesting, the Aboriginal people believe that after death, we turn up in animals, insects, lizards, iguanas, and all this sort of things. So I don't know if you know the movie Picking the Hanging Rock. Picking the Hanging Rock is a very romantic movie about Victorian times of girls in the bush, in the college in 1900, and they go to the Hanging Rock picnic by the Madame, the very old woman who was running this establishment, and then go to the slopes, which they go to Melbourne, 7 kilometers from Melbourne. It's called Hanging Rock. It's Aboriginal secret site, which very strange rock formation, granite formation, and the mistress told them, don't walk on the rocks under any conditions. And basically, the 3 girls going there and disappearing. And apparently, they carry you through. This is, of course, not the real story, but it's the story was written by the author over one night, and then very interesting movie and beautiful book as well. Very small book, Picking the Hanging Rock. Very interesting. And when you go in there, I had Picking the Hanging Rock. It's a really magnetic place. Something in this rock. Very scary. Okay, so this is an illusion show. This is another so now another type of painting which I want to show you is the X-ray paintings. So Aboriginal people was very well known about anatomy, not they all only, but animal anatomy. And they, especially Northern Territory, they have type of X-ray painting. So basically, all very properly anatomically organs inside this is my, of course, clumsy painting from Kakadu National Park, which I try to she's very ranger and artist as well. She's in the courses in the Kakadu National Park, which is a massive park. By the way, I booked accommodation, but by mistake booked not in Kakadu National Park, but in Canal Island, on the same hotel on the same name, and I have to sleep in the bush in the tent. Because there was only 3 boulders there on the some 500 case area. So this is the X-ray type of painting. Like here, for example, X-ray style human. They very often have headdresses here. One here. They are more detailed, especially fish and animals, or like this one, for example. They are quite detailed because this type of fish, I don't remember the name, have these whiskers here, which are quite detailed. And you can imagine that these paintings have thousands of years. So it's quite stunning. We have as well, I did a picture of the stencils of the hands, like you have in the skull things which are on the rocks, which was quite interesting marking. I made there my hand as well, not on the rock, but this showing the area of Western Australia, which is the red dust. Basically, everything is such strong red color. I painted this with the mud, just with the water. This is just just because iron deposits, of course, in Western Australia, we export, this is why Australia is rich, because we export all iron ore to China. And the iron deposits causing absolutely mesmerizing red, thousands of miles to the drive red color, which with the sun when going down, it's just absolutely amazing view. Now, quickly, I want to show you this tiger, Tasmanian tiger. This Tasmanian tiger was extinct some over 4,000 years ago, which was painted by Aboriginal people. So, well, at least 4,000 years ago. And we have evidence of first colonization. And all the British came, and you can see the ship painted, and they recognized what exactly ship was and what exactly and it's the Darwin Harbour at this time. And you can see on the top one and another on all details. And you can see, of course, there's no Aboriginal, they have no pockets, and they don't have and they don't have clouds as well. But it's interesting how you can see the history of the another like breast with virtually women exposed, and another male and female Namarkon valve with the pair of spheres. They have very often access of this one, of this one. This one, now I can show this one around. This one, which I draw standing in front of the rock table. This is my, but it was very hot, it was like 40 degrees. But this you can see my road in the front, road exactly there. So this was very important. This one, Lamargo. This is a spirit which causes lightning and storms. And in northern territory it's very important because the weather season change. I don't know if you know, but there are two places in the world, Argentina and Darwin. There are places with the biggest fireworks on the sky display. The fireworks but lightning, basically, when the season change. So you can go down and experience this absolutely cacophony of the lightning of the sky, which is one of the biggest in the world. And this is why, who is made from this lightning? This one because it has this axis, making turning them around, and making this thing, making the lightning, and as well have the circulating sort of extension of the hands, and of course have the very interesting. We talked about the model history. So male things in Aboriginal art, as you can see, is some strange shape. So this medical thing, but I was working as a urologist, so I was interested to know. So what happens that if you look at the things of Guarana animal, this exactly that is. And Aboriginal have very sacred attachment to guanas, and they believe they have ceremonial hunting human young bones, these things, which is now I don't think that practice. But years and years ago, I saw photographs through this process, which can be definitely very painful down in the bush, with quite risks. But they believe that the fur is better fertility, which in fact in animal biology, the stimulation somewhere can activate, ovulation or things. So that's some role, but this is again ceremonial thing, which on painting is visible. This is Lorna, of course, this is a very fun story. So you can see here there is very sexual Lorna Naparula artwork, which can represent, of course, two different male and female artwork, I would say. This happened, so what happened, there was ministerial meeting in Canberra with Aboriginal people, and they came, and one of the ministers, they handed this tool with the belief that his son will marry the Aboriginal daughter, as a concept. Interesting. Now, book. Now this part I don't want to be can be recorded, but not disseminated. But do you know that the instrument leader do? Yes, very famous. They were now trying to search in internet or any resources or any what is the origin of this instrument? And why women can't play the rhythm ever in Aboriginal culture? Why to answer the question? So when I was in I think that the most remote Aboriginal folk in Ardmore, in Kakadu National Park, in Ubir, there was very knowledgeable young person who's for a long time working there. And I saw this artwork, because I have this work in my book. Now this part I don't want to be actually straight. But I was very interested. What is this? What does it mean? You know? And there was very limited number of springs. This was, we do etchings, you have copies. So this was, I think, was only 4 or something, and this was only 1. And I asked, and he said, "Oh, this is very special film because we're not allowed to sell this too many copies." I said, "Oh, why? Oh, well, because why? The story or the origin of Videographers, which originated in England in Australia. Sad story, but why they don't want to sell this on copy on toys? Because Aboriginal people believe that stone painted can repeat, and if the story is bad, they don't want this. And very often when they paint it, like Laura or other, they paint and overpaint something. They very often paint for some themselves and saying something, and you ask, "Oh, what is this? What you painted?" And say, "Oh, no, nothing," and overpaint. So there are stories under stories, and very often in Aboriginal things there are things that you have to understand what it's about, and very often there are hidden things there which you don't understand. Okay, so this is almost end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. I hope will work.
Very small, very strong man.
Uncontrollable individual, strong man, with a large penis, live in a cave, and one day when it was hunting, 2 young ladies came and saw him, and he thought that he was given from God or someone's given for them as a gift. So he sexually abused them. When they went next day for hunting, they cauterized with the logs, fireworks, the women wounds. Aboriginal people. So the Aboriginal community sent another woman as a bite for him. And they trapped him and put in the pit in the ground. So this painting is seeing him from the top, laying in the hole trapped in the ground. Because he has uncontrolled libido, he masturbated, and he lost all these parts of his body during this thing, laying there. And his penis fell out during these things. And this is how first the radio appeared. And this is why women never will be able. Because it's penis. You understand?
So, I know.
You understand the story again?
Yeah,
Yes.
again.
Well, this is story. This original story is not made up. This is original story of original Videographers which you will never ever read about.
Just telling the story could bring down.
Yes. And I was very surprised because you should have this event or something. You have artwork, done for very long time and centuries. What this is about, and this is the story. Okay, almost end. Well, if you want to know more, I have few. There's millions of books, of course, reading about original story. there are a few books. This book, this one, I know the author very well. This is the first person who started to sell Aboriginal art in Australia. He opened in 70s art store in Sydney. And grow up, and he was there in New York, in South Street. He was the director of the Aboriginal art here. I learned from him a lot, and he published this book, which is not only book about Aboriginal art. It's titled "The Dealer is the Devil," because they blame dealers for all these things, but in fact, they absolutely help Aboriginal people to promote the artwork and promote overseas as well, and help them their life as well. But this book contains lots of history and culture in Australia. No one in Australia for a long time worked in any museum to help Aboriginal painting. First Aboriginal painting was like 30 years ago, first time ever, Northern Territory only. And New South Wales, Sydney was the last art gallery which helped Aboriginal art. How do you discuss this for you? Well, and so this is a book very recommended. This is a very old book, a green color book about all the stories about Aboriginal, very beautifully painted by one of the first explorers of Australia history. This is the book about Lorna, which I will talk about in February recently. And this is the Udir painting book signed by author, which has a very interesting talks with him because he was, again, not originally Australian, but very interested to start to promote.
We have the name so we can see the titles.
Yes. Well, all these books are here.
Oh, okay.
Name the title.
Okay, I
The book are there.
you have all this, probably this is what I did not because it's quite thick. The dealers is the devil. The dealer is the devil. The Dream Kind book, which is a very beautiful book. I'm sure you can read online. Okay. And this is the end. And if you will be interested, in February I will talk about that after 70s. Now, why 70s? Just quickly. So, what we talk now, this was all these ancient paintings. And what happened in the 1970s? Someone gave, in the middle of desert, Papua Tula, and Ethiopia is another place, close to Ice Springs, in the complete nowhere, gave to the school acrylic painting to Aboriginal children. And now we have Aboriginal art painting, acrylic paintings. This happened. And they started to, and why before as well, because Aboriginal people was not allowed to sell anything artwork by the elders. There was the law in Australia. And until the last elder person, very conservative, died in the 70s. They changed and then decided, well, we can make our life better selling our artwork. But before it was prohibited. So you couldn't even buy officially from Aboriginal people. So it was very, the history of how Aboriginal artwork was considered in Australia and overseas is very interesting story. Thank you very much. Any questions? Any questions?
Oh,
Yes.
no, not quite. Maybe later I'll ask.
Okay. I'll go. Yes.
I was really interested. I'm not sure how to put this, it's too complicated to ask, but would you say that art, the meaning of art to the Aboriginals is the same sort of thing as it is to us? I saw an exhibit in Melbourne about a year and a half ago of contemporary Aboriginal art. It was beautiful. And it looked very sophisticated. It looked like people had been to art school to understood art the same way I did maybe, but
No, I fully agree with you.
absolutely.
It's more of a collective thing rather than where it's like build and individualizing it, right? And also like I think a lot of the instances they weren't done just for the sake of art, they weren't so that when children get into the world, they're like, okay, this is the culture we live in, this is the science, this is how food is, but this is how we eat, this is how we play. It's like these are learning materials.
Especially there was no language.
Yeah,
Information.
for sure. And it's like you know, it's not happening in books, like, but it's doing simple work, and it's, you know, like the very goes up bit that's like it's trying to describe why the land was washed a certain way and like why water runs a certain way. So you know, everything we learn like is done based on the story. This is just that on a much larger cultural scale. I guess if that's how we process information, the story. So it's there's more dimensions to it than just like applying it than less dimensions for ourselves. Yeah, does that make sense?
In the land, we have stories for every part. This hill, this river, this thing goes behind some story, which we don't have a sort of concept.
What I think about myself is that is the name of the art form. You mentioned that Aboriginal women would do silking.
No, I mean, Aboriginal women's very often was painted the body, and she was responsible for painting the body.
Not on silk.
Sorry?
Not on silk.
On silk, that river, yes, it's specifically the silk. Rose, on silk.
Is it the thing is wax or how do they social Viking? The Indonesian art form.
I think it's very similar kind of art, Aboriginal art, that's on silk.
Okay.
As a material, instead of canvas and music. But it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
Very unique, because there is only one seal painting all and you know,
oh, I see.
yes, it's very unique.
Wow.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, come to think about it. Now gives you more idea of rough acting and figures and ceremonies.